Just preparing to stream now, Chairman.
Yep. Good morning and welcome to everyone. And with this being our first live planning committee meeting and the first committee meeting since the 5th of March, it's really good to see everyone today. And I'd also like to give a warm welcome to anyone listening or viewing today's meeting on the web. I would also like to apologise for the last one that's been cancelled. Sorry. We normally have a full committee. We normally have a full committee of councillors that will make decisions, also additional officers that will be presenting the reports, administering the video conference and providing legal advice. I'd also like to give a warm welcome to anyone listening or viewing today's meeting. Can I just ask everyone to switch the mic off, please? Yeah. Before we start, there is just a few housekeeping points. If everyone could remain muted and have the video on, and then when you'd like to speak, just press the button on the participants list and I will call you in the same order. If you need to leave the meeting at any point, please let me know, just so that we're clear that it's not due to a connectivity issue. This then takes us on to agenda item 1, which is register attendance, and Joanne will give you a roll call.
Good morning, councillors. I will just do a roll call of names. If each councillor could confirm whether they are present, please. First of all, Councillor Terry Aldridge.
Here. Here.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
Here.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
Present.
Councillor Sid Dennis is absent. Councillor David Edgington. Councillor David Edgington.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
Present.
Councillor Alex Hall.
Present.
Councillor David Hall.
Present.
Councillor Neil Jones.
Present.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
Present.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
Present.
Councillor Daniel McNally.
Present.
And Councillor Jim Swanson.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So there's just Councillor Sid Dennis, which is absent.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next, would the officers just like to introduce themselves? So we start with Anne Good.
Matthews.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm Good, Democratic Services.
Thank you. Joanne.
Joanne Patterson, Democratic Services Officer, and I'll be taking the minutes at today's meeting.
Thank you. Andrew.
You're on mute, Andrew.
You're on mute. He's having technical problems, Elaine.
Morning, Chairman. Thank you. Morning, everybody. Elaine Speed, Democratic Services Officer, and I'll be assisting in facilitating the meeting today. Thank you.
John Armstrong.
Good morning, Chairman. Council's Monitoring Officer, and I'm assist with governance this morning.
Thank you. Michelle.
Morning, everybody. I'm Michelle Walker. I'm one of the planning officers, and I'm here in relation to the presentation of item number 7 in Rugby. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul.
Morning, Chairman. My name's Paul Edwards. I'm the Assistant Director for Planning. Thank you.
And last but not least, Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Needham. I'm the Senior Planning Officer, and I'm here in connection with the presentation of item number 8 at Woodhall Bar.
Thank you. So that brings us on to agenda item number 2, which is declaration of interests. Anyone? Councillor Jones.
Good morning, Chairman. Yes, I am ward councillor for item 6, and I think, like many people, I've had communications regarding item 8, but I haven't had any. I've not responded to any of them.
Yeah, I think, should we do a declaration for everyone in the committee for the correspondence we've all received for that one?
James Swanson here. I'm a member of Lindsay Marsh Drainage Board.
Thank you. Councillor Edgington.
Yes, Chairman. Item 9, the applicant is known to me, but it won't have any bearing on the decision I take. That would depend on how the presentation goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I've had correspondence regarding items 7 and 8.
Just repeat that, sorry.
I've had correspondence regarding items 7 and 8 on the agenda, but not responded to any of them.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
The same for 7 and 8. I've had respondents, but it hasn't changed my mind on that one. I'm also the ward councillor for item 5. I have had correspondence, but I have not opened those correspondence.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Aldridge.
Yeah, I'm a member of Lindsay Marsh Drainage Board as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Apologies, Chair. I can't seem to raise my blue hand. It's Tom Kemp. I am aware. I've been made aware of the application from Mr. Haynes at item 8. He is known to me. We play golf at the same club. It won't affect my decision making. And at item 9, Mr. Stokes and I used to play rugby together many years ago. Again, he's not contacted me, but I just thought I ought to make you aware. It won't affect my decision. Thank you.
Chairman, just to advise that Councillor Sid Dennis has now joined the meeting at 11 minutes past 10, so he's with us now. Thank you. He's just connecting.
Councillor Eyre.
Member of the Drainage Board, but I've received no correspondence on any item. Thank you.
And before we carry on to the next one, Councillor Dennis, have you got any declarations? Welcome.
Welcome. I'm just looking for your face. I can't find it yet. Just hold on a second. Oh, there you are. Good morning. Good morning. Morning. Yes, I have. Just one second. I'm just in a meeting. I'll ring you back in a second. Cheers. Sorry about that. Apologies. Yeah, I've been lobbied on item number 9. This is the Friscony application. I've been lobbied by Mr. Paul Edwards, the agent, but it won't affect my decision or anything to do with of where I'm at. If you don't mind, if that's okay. Thank you.
No problem. Right, so that brings us on to agenda item number 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. I'll propose them. Councillor Edgington, would you like to second them?
I will second those, Chairman.
Yeah, and if anyone has any problems with them, raise your hand. If not, we'll accept them as a true record. Yep, so we'll accept them as a true record then, because no one's got any complaints. And the next item on the agenda is update from Planning Policy Committee. This item is on the agenda because the Planning Policy Committee sets the local policy the Planning Committee has to take into account when looking at an application. Therefore, it is important that we are kept up to date with any policy changes. So, Councillor Matthews, have you got anything to update?
Thank you, Chair. The Planning Policy Committee has been busy in light of the developing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the economy. The committee is looking at SP19, which refers to the levelling up of conditions on caravan parks and extensions to the season, mitigated with enhanced safety and evacuations conditions. We're also exploring the use of local development orders to ensure coastal businesses have a genuine chance of recovery from COVID-19 and the opportunity to trade for as long as they can this year and next. And also to encourage the enhancement and investment in businesses without the encumbrance of unnecessary planning permission. These are both being now looked at by reference groups. We're also looking at spatial strategy, and I hope to update you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Matthews. So that brings on to item number 5, which is land at 52 St Mary's Lane, Louth. And I think it's Paul Edwards on this one.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, Councillors. Good morning. Right, I'm showing the screen. I hope you can see that the first page with the 11th of June date on it. Maybe someone can let me know if you can't see the shared screen. We're on page 33 of the agenda, Chair, which is the site location plan for this application at number 52 St Mary's Lane. So the report starts proper on page 35. Just a quick correction in the location at the top of the page. The location on the page says land at 50 St Mary's Lane. It is indeed 52, and I can confirm that all other publicity entries on the register do say 52, so there's no queries or harm with that single typo error on the first page of the report. So it's an application, it's an outline application for one dwelling at 52 St Mary's Lane. And just to give you the context then on the screen that I'm showing now, Louth Town Centre that I'm circling, St Mary's Lane, leaving Louth out towards the west, and we're looking at this area here up St Mary's Lane. So if we go into a little bit more detail, St Mary's Lane down the bottom right hand side of the picture, and then the private road that goes up. Number 52 is this dwelling here, and the application site is in the area now that I'm circling, and St Mary's Park is top right hand of the screen. So there, in terms of the application drawings, there's the red line application site, and the stoop and the green lane that are referred to in the representations. These are private roads, and they are showing that the access to the site is in the bottom left-hand corner of the red line site. And there's some part of the tree survey, the existing block plan, and going then back to the report on page 35, that site area, the description of the surroundings is set out in part 2 of the report. Description of the proposal, part 3 of the report. It's an outline with all matters reserved. And the bottom of that page, we talk about the trees and the tree survey, and it's clear that a number of trees will need to be removed to facilitate development. Over the page then, consultation summaries over those, and the next pages, you'll see all the statutory consultees are summarised from paragraph 4.3 onwards, and you'll also see, Chair, on the supplementary report, there are further comments from the Town Council that are there produced in full on the first page of the supplement, and there aren't any other updates in terms of representations to report. They are committee pages or on that one supplement, and you'll see Louth Town Council is objecting for the reasons given in detail in that supplementary report. It's worthwhile, I think, Chair, pointing out the comments from the Highway Authority because of the the number of applications that we refer to that have been granted in the area of St Mary's Lane, the Highway Authority were specifically asked about neighbours' concerns about visibility and cumulative impact. And you'll see in the second paragraph of the LCC comments, you'll see that they summarise that traffic from one further house would be imperceptible. And at the bottom of their comments there, negligible in terms of highway safety, so there are no Highway Authority objections on this application. Across the page then, on page 37, you'll see that we are summarising 5 letters of objection. You'll notice that the Louth Town Council comments say that there are 9 letters of objection. There are 9 because one of the properties has produced up to 5 letters of objection. So there are letters from 5 addresses, 9 in all. At the bottom of that page, page 37, we summarise the site history, and of particular relevance over the page are a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 permissions in the recent history in the vicinity of the application site. So going into planning policy, you'll see then the issues are highlighted and summarised at the bottom of page 38. And the first issue is the principle of development. And on a preliminary matter at the bottom of that page, we talk about the validity of the application. There are allegations that the applicant has no right of access over the private roads. That is dealt with in the validity of the application. They've completed the correct certificates, and whether or not someone has got permission to go over someone else's land is a private matter, and that isn't a reason, as the committee knows, for resisting any sort of permission. So the principle of development we deal with at paragraph 7.3 onwards of the report, and you'll see in 7.4 it's an appropriate location, it's within the built-up area, and therefore, as a conclusion, we believe that the principle of housing is acceptable in this location. We then go on to highway safety and access, and because of what I pointed out earlier on, you'll see at the bottom of the page, page 39, there are no reason to refuse it in terms of number of properties, poor visibility, or activity along the lane. Then we go over the page and we talk about it on trees and the local ecology, and you'll see there on the screen that's the indicative layout of the dwelling on the site, and you'll see it's central within the site. The report does acknowledge that trees are going to have to be removed, and you'll see in paragraph 7.12 further reports will be necessary because this is only an outline application to positively set out where the siting would be. And then finally, Chair, on other considerations, of course, because of appearance and scale are all matters that are reserved. They're not in front of the committee at the moment. We can't determine the effects on any neighbours until we get the reserved matters application, and therefore we are just dealing with the principle of an outline application at this stage. Going then to the conclusions, we're on page 41 of the report, Chair, and you'll see it's in an appropriate location. There are no outstanding statutory consultee comments, and there you'll see there is a recommendation for approval on page 41 and over the page on 42 with those 6 conditions that are listed. There are a couple of photographs, Chairman, if you wish to see them. As I say, there's the application site. These are the stoop and the green lane that approaches the application site. This is the green lane looking back west. The application site is over the right-hand side. That's within the property. And then this is looking through the application site itself. And you'll see St Mary's Park over the fence is on the right-hand side of the photograph. And then looking more centrally up the site, the house itself at 52 is in the trees to the left, and this is the application site. And you can see there are trees of varying quality, which is why a further arboricultural report would be required to accompany any reserved matters application. Another couple of shots, Chair. And so finally, then there's the application site in red. It's an outline application with all matters reserved, and there is a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So that takes over to committee. And we've got Councillor Hall is first on the list.
I think you'll find I'm the only one on the list. I would actually like to recommend to refuse this application. That lane is incredibly narrow, and I have heard from the neighbours that that junction, anything coming out that junction, invariably, if they don't know it's there, they will invariably hit it. The visibility coming out of the corner of that one is nigh on nil. Coming out of the junction at the bottom, coming onto St Mary's Road itself, is absolutely awful. There is a small mirror attached to the wall on the opposite side, but it only views one way. It doesn't view the other side. Basically it's a garden grab, and I'd like to recommend that we refuse this application.
And just, are you proposing a refusal?
I am.
And on what grounds?
The ones I've just given you.
On traffic?
It's on traffic and the fact that it's a garden grab.
Right, okay. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Good morning, Chairman. I thought that was a very clear and succinct presentation by the planning officer. The traffic, according to the documentation, the highways and everybody else, is very minimal and likely to have negligible impact on this site. I think this is a bit of NIMBYism on behalf of the Town Council. I mean, it's one house in the middle of an existing built-up area, if you like, although they are rural. And I can't see any reason why this application should be refused. I don't think we have any grounds to refuse it, and I support the officer's recommendation for approval, and I put that forward as a proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Matthews.
Can I second that, please?
Just Councillor Matthews first.
Oh, sorry. I don't have a blue hand, so it's a difficult job.
Hello, I seem to have lost all visuals for some reason. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. As Mr. Edwards says, it's appropriate location. It's one dwelling. There's going to be minimal impact. It's in an area that's already built up. So I'd like to actually second it, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall. Oh, sorry, no. Alex Hall.
Yeah, so I already seconded it, didn't I? So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Councillor David Hall.
Okay, I'd just like to come back. The road traffic, I get the feeling that it was a paper exercise to look at that junction for the traffic. If you've actually gone and had a look at the actual site, it's incredibly narrow down there and it's really hard to see out of.
Can I help, Chair?
Yeah, unless, did Angela want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. As the committee will be aware, my advice always on these sort of grounds is if you're looking at a technical reason for refusal on highways grounds, at appeal, you'd have to support that with technical highways evidence. And whether it's a paper exercise or not, the Highways Authority does have a swathe of information available to them, statistics. They would be able to defend a reason for refusal. And as a committee, if you went down the line of a refusal of this one on highway grounds, then I'm not sure what evidence the local authority could produce to support that reason for refusal. And that does lead the local authority into the grounds of whether they've acted reasonably or not in a refusal. So I'd just be very cautious of anything remotely technical on highways grounds when there is no objection from the Highway Authority.
Thank you. Paul, did you want to come in or not?
I think I can really only refer committee to the papers to page 36 and the specific quote from the Highway Authority as a result of us asking the Highway Authority to look specifically at the situation, and the comments in quotes from them where they say, for example, drivers adjust their driving and their behaviour. There's no records of any personal injury accidents at that junction, and they don't believe there's an unacceptable risk to road safety. So I would concur with Mrs Simmons that there's apparently no grounds to resist it on highway grounds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, Councillor Jones, got your hand raised.
I'm just unmuting. I would like to add to the proposal that that includes the officers' conditions.
The what? Sorry, I didn't quite.
The officers' conditions of approval.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So no one else is wanting to speak. So we shall. Councillor James has proposed and Councillor Matthews has seconded. So we'll go to the vote.
No, I have.
Pardon?
Well, Councillor Matthews did.
Councillor Hall did propose refusal, but no one else has seconded so far. So no one else is speaking. So we'll go to the vote. Joanne, if you want to set the vote at all.
Thank you. I'll just do a roll call of members, and if you can just confirm whether you are for, against or abstaining, please. Councillor Terry Aldridge.
Against.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
For.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
For.
Councillor Sid Dennis.
For.
Councillor David Edgington.
For.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
For.
Councillor Alex Hall.
For.
Councillor David Hall.
Against.
Councillor Neil Jones.
For.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
For.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
For.
Councillor Daniel McNally.
Abstain.
Councillor Jim Swanson.
For.
Just bear with me, Chairman, I'll just add up the results. So that's 10 for, 2 against and 1 abstention, Chairman.
Thank you. That's been approved as per written. So that brings us on to item number 6, which is land rear of Page Close, Sibsey. And that is Andy Booth, if his mic's working this time.
Hopefully, Chairman, can you hear me okay with that?
Yeah, fine.
Brilliant. I can just hopefully pull up the screen there as well, so hopefully members can see that. That's okay. Hopefully, is the screen with the photos, is that showing clearly as well? Can I just check?
Yeah.
Thank you. So firstly, good morning. Firstly, just to comment, it's an outline application for erection of 80 dwellings. Access is to be considered, but all the matters are reserved on land rear of Page Close in Sibsey. The officer recommendation is for approval. Firstly, so just as update, if I can draw members' attention to the supplementary papers that were circulated before, there is a detailed representation from Councillor Ashton. The members will no doubt have seen. And additional to that, we now have comments from the County Highway and Lead Local Foot Authority. They raise no objection, but are requesting a number of conditions relating to both highways and drainage requirements. Also for the adherence to a travel plan, the details of which are still being fine-tuned. and for its monitoring and the delivery of a traffic regulation order to extend the speed limit on the A16. Additionally, 2 third-party representations that we've received, one in support of the proposal, confirming they feel the village needs growth to sustain the facilities. And the second one was an objection which reiterates many of the concerns that are expressed and identified in the officer's report. So that's really the update to the considerations. Just to sort of give members a flavour and run through the presentation quickly. Aerial view of the site. The site sits here, northern edge of the village, to the west of the A16. Again, another aerial view that with the red circle showing the site right on the northern edge. The Ordnance Survey Map, again, the red line identifying the application site. Just for clarity, the blue line is additional land that the applicant also owns, but the red line is the key part, that's the application site. And as you can see, sits northern edge of the village. Part of the site, a significant part of the site is allocated. This is the extract from the local plan. This is the site, this yellow square at the northern end. This is the site that's identified in the local plan as being allocated. And then just for clarity, as members will have noticed from the report, the site also includes some additional land north of the allocated site. So the black line that runs across this indicative plan shows the extent of the allocated area within the local plan, and the area to the north is additional area that's been brought in as an additional windfall element and to facilitate access to the site. Just 2 or 3 photos to show context. This is the view along the A16. These buildings here along here, the Page Close runs off to the west here. That's Page Close, so the site sits behind here. Again, looking from the north back, the site sits in this area to the right of your photo and also behind the properties that you can see there. So it's this general area here that we're looking at. And again, just to show context, again, it's a fairly level, which is a level, open site. This is looking out of the village northwards. And again, just a view, it's a field, basically. And again, just to give context, the northern part of the site, if you were to look across the A16, then this is what you'd see. So the extent of built development in the village on the eastern side of the A16 is this. This is the property, and the site is extended to pretty much marry with the extent of the curtilage of this property to the north. And that's it. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Cullington first.
Morning, Chair, thank you. Upon this application, I've read the supplementary agenda that we've received yesterday. Question for Mr. Booth and for possibly our monitoring officer. The comments raised by our fellow councillor that's ward member, he's saying that our officers, which I understand they do a very good job, they lead us the best they can with the information they provide, but our councillor is actually saying that they've totally abolished the local plan. I don't see this as correct. If this case went to appeal under this abolishment of the local plan, would it be won at appeal, please?
Would you like me to give some comments at this stage, Chairman, on that?
Yeah, can do, yeah.
Thanks. Well, firstly, I think I'd just two points to make, if I can. Firstly, that obviously, and hopefully you can still see the indicative plan of the site. A significant part of the site is already allocated in the local plan. So that's an important part of the delivery of the housing requirements of the district. So certainly in terms of that significant southern extent of the of the proposal. That's certainly not at odds with any part of the local plan as a matter of principle. Equally, in terms of the northern section, and if I can draw members' attention to the officer's report, there are other policies that equally come into play, and they relate to windfall developments. Now, Sibsey is identified as one of the more sustainable settlements in the district, and as a consequence, there is in principle support equally for suitable and appropriate windfall developments to be supported. That there are criteria that needs to be considered against, but in your officer's view, this larger site, which includes the allocation plus the additional area lands, accords in general terms with those policy objectives and requirements, and hence the reason why the officer recommendation is to support in this case. I think we appreciate that it's a sensitive proposal, that there are objections locally, but on balance, the officer view is that it does accord with the principles of the policy and therefore can be supported.
Thank you, Andrew. Did you want to come back, Councillor?
Please, yes. Yeah, on that then, so long as we can support this application and we're not going to be kicked in the teeth at appeal stage for this, and that our officers are sure that they can overcome these objections for the bit that's outside of the local plan, then I'm happy to propose this for following the officer's recommendations.
Thank you.
Can I speak?
Councillor Jones?
Oh, for goodness sake.
I just don't know where to start with this one. You've obviously read, and I've just read, quite an extensive report or suggestion by Tom Warlow, the ward councillor. This is more of an avalanche than a windfall site. You're actually doubling the site. There's 34 houses allowed in that local plan. This is another 43, I think. So you're 46. So you're actually doubling the site. As you can see from the plan, the village of Sibsey sits the other way. This is on the wrong end of Sibsey. It's going to create an enormous impact on the village. There's only one house, which you could see that it's changed now, the map, but there's only one house, that large farmhouse on the right hand side, that is part of the settlement. And then suddenly you've got an estate of 80 houses that are going to be put on that green field. I mean, I've sat in this planning department for quite a long time and been fighting for open countryside. Well, I don't think there's anything more open countryside than this site where you want to put 80 houses. There's already an approval to put 239 houses in Sibsey, which will nearly double the village. Then another 80, when actually only 34 is recommended by the local plan. As I say, if you'd all like to read Councillor Ashton's memo on this, it's probably much more succinct than I can do it. Item 3.3, the proposed residential development will be accessed from a single point on the main road. You've got 80 houses coming onto one road. We worried about the last application with Louth, which got one house coming onto a road because there was too much traffic. Here you've got 80 coming onto one access. 7.6, it says to qualify as an appropriate location, the policy requires that the site, if you develop, will retain the core shape and form of the settlement. This is not anywhere near retaining the core shape and form of the settlement. As you can see, it's a carbuncle on the side, which will take it away from the actual existing village. The village is all laid over here. I don't know if it's east, west, or where it is, but the village lays further this other way, and you can see where the main settlement is, and you're going to stick this windfall side, which I think the locals call an avalanche, on that corner. So I just can't think we can support this application at all. I do support the green sites that has been accepted by the parish council, the villagers and residents, the two yellow sites, sorry. But this one, look, is way off and is not part of the settlement. So I strongly recommend that we refuse the application and support the local council and the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Judge, just for clarity, are you proposing a refusal?
Who, me or
Yeah, Councillor Jones, are you proposing?
Oh, I am recommending that we refuse the application.
Chairman.
You just
Chairman. Can I speak?
Councillor Alex Hall, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say that I totally agree with Councillor Jones, and I think that under the local plan it's quite clear that under SP3 section 4 it's not an appropriate location, and under SP11 section 1, you know, with the Sibsey Trader Mill, it's an important site, and you know, I think also in section 2 that, you know, it clearly, the application would clearly harm the site of the mill, which is obviously significant locally to the people of Sibsey. So I would say that I totally agree with Councillor Jones, and I would second his refusal.
Thank you. Can I just bring Angela in?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just really to go back to what Councillor Cunnington was saying and to give some reassurance, really. Obviously, when a local authority has got a 5-year housing land supply and an up-to-date local plan, that doesn't mean there's a blanket ban on anything which isn't allocated. That's why the local plan does have windfall policies in there, so that every site that comes forward can be assessed in the appropriate planning balance. A council which had a blanket ban on development because they had a 5-year land supply and an up-to-date local plan, it wouldn't be lawful. So that's why councils do have windfall sites. So yes, I have read what's sort of been said, but there is a planning balance here that's been made by the planning officer, which is justifiable and could be defended on appeal. Obviously, the planning balance that's been made, whether the committee has a different view to that, then they'd have reasons, they'd have to give reasons as to why it's contrary to the planning balance that's already been made. But I'm confident that the officer's report does make a balanced argument in favour of the application.
Thank you, Angela. Councillor Matthews.
Sort of sitting on the fence a bit here, really, but actually it is near allocated land, and there is a windfall policy, so I would be inclined to support the approval, second the approval of this development.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, for me, it's I think obviously in the local plan it is outlined as a site that like development, you know, would be good. I think for 80 dwellings, when the plan says 34, it seems very excessive, and it does feel to me like it will have a massive impact on the village. But I'm sort of sitting on the fence with this one, because obviously it is a site that, you know, is allocated for development, but I feel like 80 dwellings is just excessive.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Sorry, Billy beat me to it. It does seem excessive. It is a large number of houses, but the Eastville site in Laos is much larger than that one, and it's coming off a single road. The Grimsby Road is similar to that one. Can't really use the argument of that size on that one because it's under the 100 house mark for a single access for this amount of houses. So I don't know which way to go on this one. But I would go with the possibly go with the officer's recommendation and second Councillor Matthews.
Right, Councillor Dennis.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to support Councillor Matthews. I think it'd be very difficult in appeal. I think it'd be very, very difficult to refuse this. you certainly couldn't refuse it on highway grounds, as the legal beagle pointed out to us. It is a lot of houses, but we need a lot of houses, and I think we need to get on. So I would like to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to raise their hand, speak? Councillor Swanson, are you struggling for raising your hand, or?
No, I'm not struggling at all. I've got no pictures of people, so I don't know who's speaking sometimes. But I'm kind of neutral on this one. But I tend to go with the officer's report, and I felt that Councillor Ashton's written submission was a little bit NIMBYism.
All right, thank you. All right, Councillor Eyre.
The observation I would make is that the extended site gives an opportunity for a higher quality access onto the A16, where looking at the yellow plan, you're effectively exiting from a building site at the moment, building plot at the moment. I think the layout of the complete scheme is higher quality. That's perfect. Look, it's all internal, it's in the site with one access onto the main road on a bend where the visibility is good. I appreciate Councillor Ashton's concerns, but I think you may as well have the lot as a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edgington.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think it's finely balanced, and clearly it's raised a lot of interest. But my own view, listening to the presentation, is that on balance, I think that the application conforms to what we're looking for. And as Angela Simmons has said, we do have a windfall policy in respect to this. So I will support the officer recommendations. Thank you.
Councillor Aldridge.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I go along with Councillor Jones. I'd be quite happy with the 34. We've already got enough housing in East Lindsey, and this, if it was for the 34, I'd go along with it. But the 80 plus all those others that have been approved in SIBC, I'm not sure that the village can cope with that number of extra houses. Can the school cope? No mention. I can't find any mention of the school's views. But I agree with Councillor Ashton, and I agree with Councillor Jones. And I don't sit on the fence, as you know. So I would go against the approval.
Thank you, Councillor Aldridge. So I don't see anyone else raising their hand, so I think we'll go to the vote on this. The refusal was proposed and seconded first. So do we take that first, Angela? John?
Want me to assist, Chairman?
Yeah, please.
Because the original motion was from Councillor Jones, seconded by Councillor Hall, was to refuse, but that's now, and so we take the amendment first, which is the proposal, and second to approve in line with officer recommendation. So that's the motion that's on the table at the moment, is to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take the first vote is for the refusal then.
No, the first vote is to approve.
Right, so we'll take the vote to approve then.
Yeah, you're approving. So a vote for is a vote for is in line with officer recommendation to approve the planning application before members.
Yeah, so my apologies for that. So, Joanne, if you'd like to do the roll call on all those on the application for approval.
Okay, Councillor Terry Aldridge.
Against.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
Against.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
For.
Councillor Sid Dennis.
For.
Councillor David Edgington.
For.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
For.
Councillor Alex Hall.
Against.
Councillor David Hall.
For.
Councillor Neil Jones.
Against.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
For.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
For.
Councillor Daniel McNally.
Abstain.
Councillor Jim Swanson.
For.
So that's 8 for, 4 against and 1 abstention, Chairman.
Thank you. So that has been approved in line with officer recommendations. Thank you, Andy. And that brings on to item 7, which is land to the south of Horncastle Road, Rugby. Michelle Walker.
Hello, Chairman, members. I'll just do this screen share. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see the screen share now. So this is a full planning application for 147 dwellings with new accesses and other facilities, as we'll see on the plan shortly. It's a site in Rugby. So this is the aerial shot of Rugby, Marketplace here, Road to Lincoln, Louth Road, and this is Horncastle Road here. This is the site, which is this rather strange shaped site here, minus the section at the bottom. There's the scheduled ancient monument there, church in here, and the listed windmill over here. This is the Stainfield Beck, which is classed as a main river and flows in this direction. So closer view, see more clearly what I've just said. There is a wet dike that comes along here. There's also an access that goes through onto Horncastle Road in this direction. The speed limit around here is 30 miles an hour. It changes to 40 miles an hour, sorry, let's go the other way. It's 50 miles here, an hour here. It changes to 40 miles an hour there and then goes to 30 miles an hour around here. There's a bus shelter and a bus stop here. Houses here go to bungalows, and then the bungalows of Manor Drive and Rootland Close in here. So, as I said, it's a full detailed planning application. The site is not allocated in the local plan, but it does already have an outline consent granted on appeal for 108 houses. It also has an outline for 49 dwellings on roughly this sort of section of site, but both of those approvals are still live. So this is the plan. So it's the red line shows it. New access here and here onto Horncastle Road with a new frontage footway connecting the two and then connecting up to 52 Horncastle Road. 4 dwellings would have their own individual accesses directly onto Horncastle Road. There's also a small new access created for the farmer to get into the remaining area, which is in here. This piece of land is in flood zones 2 and 3 in relation to the Beck, hence why it's not part of the application site. The rest is in flood zones 1. As you can see, the houses that are laid around the roads, there's a mixture of semi-detached and detached houses, and the attenuation pond is in this area here. actually, I've just realised I have forgotten to mention to you that there are things on the supplementary agenda. So I'm sorry for that mistake. We did get 2 letters of support from third parties, and we also got a letter in support from Gleeson Homes, which members will have seen because it was on the supplementary papers. In addition, we got an email, I think it went to all members, from a Mr. Vors, who didn't want the application to be determined until after the coronavirus lockdown, mainly due to issues of IT and people accessing the committee meetings. And we also got a letter from the ward councillor, Julie Platt, who urged refusal, supported the residents who she felt objected on sound planning reasons. She felt the application was contrary to the policies in the local plan and the national planning policy framework. And overall, her views were that the site wasn't allocated on an existing commitment, it was too large and would have an adverse impact on the character of the area and on Rugby. And so she didn't feel it was a sustainable development. So that covers all the things on the supplementary. Sorry, I should have mentioned that before I started the presentation. But so if we just go back to it now, they're the houses shown around the roads. They've all got side accesses for their parking within their curtilages. Some have got garages, they all have private rear gardens, smaller front gardens, area of open space in the central position. So you get, and you've got an equipped children's play area here. And then this area here is some underground storage tanks, which will be used to provide gas so that the houses can be connected to a gas supply. On site, there is an existing angling water pumping station here, and this access serves that. Local people use that access for walking dogs, accessing the countryside beyond. As part of this proposal, there'll be a track formed at the side of this western dyke for maintenance of it, but it'll also double up as a footpath cycleway, so people will be able to continue walking through here. The attenuation pond in the bottom here, and then the rest of this area is open space. So that just shows briefly the highway details of 2 new accesses with a footway in greater detail and some white lining, some closer up views of that. This is just a drainage arrangement, so members are getting used to seeing this now on schemes, but these sort of greeny blue blobs are sort of swales, so they'll be all under drained, and they will lead to an attenuation pond, which will then release the water at attenuated rate into the dyke on the western side, which flows this way, and from the western dyke it goes into Stainfield Beck. So all the water is being directed away from the existing dwellings. These yellow blobs are to do with easements. That one's to do with the foul water, which would be taken to the existing connection on Rootland Close. So just a few snapshots of some of the houses, give a flavour. And then we come through to the photographs. So this is the site looking in a northeasterly direction. You can see there's some electricity lines running across the site. That's across the road. There's a dwelling in these trees. This is the A158, the main coast road, which goes from Skegness to Lincoln through Rugby. Bungalows across the road, which then become houses further along. The end houses on this side are these 2-storey properties. That's the rear garden of this end property. Looking again along the site frontage, so Horncastle Road is behind me. The site generally slopes in this kind of direction. The A158 is at a higher level than the site, most noticeably at this end, and it gets almost level at this end. But you can just see there the dwellings on Manor Close. So, rear gardens, you can see the Horncastle Road properties here, sorry, here. And then you come through, these are the bungalows at front Horncastle Road. There's the access through in this direction that goes through onto Horncastle Road. Manor Drive and Rootland Close properties. Many of these trees are protected. They all grow on either in the dwellings gardens or on the dwelling side of the Dyke. This is the end properties on Rutland Close, which are side onto the site. You can see here the Western Dyke. And then this would be where the maintenance track line, so you can still get through onto Horncastle Road. So that's just if you look in the totally opposite direction now. So I'm stood with my back to Manor Close. You can see the Western Dyke continuing down here. This is the area where the attenuation pond would be. That tree line represents Stainfield Beck, sorry. And this is just a shot looking along the A158 out of town. That's where it changes from 40 to 50. And that's a little commercial unit across the road. And then looking in the opposite direction, I appreciate some people are thinking there's not many cars on the day I took it, but clearly I waited for a gap to show members how the road is into the village centre. I think that's probably the last slide. It is, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Open for debate. I'm waiting for someone to put their hand up.
Can I speak, Chairman?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Alex Hall.
Oh, thank you. I see that Rugby Parish Council have concerns regarding the application, but I do see that the majority of those concerns have been addressed in the conditions set out by the officers, and in Section 106 agreement. That has also dealt with a lot of the other issues that the consultees had, such as NHS England and Lincolnshire County Council highways. And I think that the same goes with the objections made by the neighbours. You know, a lot of those objections have been dealt with on page 79 under section 3 of our papers. I think it sets it out very clearly, all of the things that have been done to justify the objections made by the consultees. So I would, with this in mind, I would like to propose that we approve this application with the conditions that have been set by the officers and with the 106 agreement in it as well. Propose to approve. Thank you.
Councillor Hall, you went a bit quiet at the end now. Have you finished?
Yeah, I'm finished. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Jones is next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Well, as I say, it's very similar to the last application, with the exception that there's 108 dwellings already approved on this site. And if you read section 717 of the inspector's view, he doesn't think any harm is going to come to the listed buildings as a result of this development, basically because they're surrounded by houses anyway. And so I can see little argument to object to this application. The last one had a 140% rise in numbers. This has only got 22%. So I'll support Alex Hall for the application to be approved to the conditions of the officer.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Eyre.
I just wonder if I could have some clarification with regard to the electricity cables that go across the site. Are they to stay in place or to be diverted? They look as though they're fairly high powered ones, and it was thought at one time not to be very healthy to be living underneath them. I don't know if Michelle Walker could clarify that, please.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
You want to come back on anything else, Councillor?
Now I think there's been a bit of magic applied to the application. The architect sharpened his pencil in some areas, and as far as it goes, bearing in mind the number of houses already approved, it seems an acceptable scheme to me.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis?
Yeah, sorry about that. I apologise. I've just got my little coffee machine on the go. I do apologise. Yeah, I do apologise. Yeah, I would move to approve. I'd just like to say to the monitoring officer that I think I did receive some mail about from a member of the public to this. But you just recollected. I just thought I'd like to just mention that to the monitoring officer. I did receive some mail on this this application, vis-a-vis wanting to put it off until after the coronavirus, I think. But you know, we are where we are, and I just needed to make that clear. But I do support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor Brooks?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I wanted to say really was it's just really refreshing to see the Section 106 actually being used and some a substantial amount of money being paid towards the things, and I just thought it's worth mentioning that. Yeah, it's good to see that.
No, thank you. And I'm not. Is there anyone else wanting to speak? Not seen any, so we'll go to the vote. Councillor Alex Hall has proposed approval. Councillor Jones has seconded the approval.
I keep putting my hand up, but it's not registering, obviously, on your screens.
Right, so before we carry on then, would you like to come in, Councillor Aldridge?
Yeah, I would say that there's no mention of the objection that the waste disposal have put in. I mean, I've mentioned this before, that the internal roads that are being approved are not wide enough for the new vehicles. We had the same thing in Holton-le-Clay. We've had the same thing in Louth, and I think that should be a condition, that there should be mention made that the width of the roads must be sufficient to allow waste disposal vehicles can go down. People don't use their garages. They just park on the road. We've had a major problem in Holton-le-Clay, which I've raised. And the only way that vehicles can go down there now is if a smaller vehicle is used. And some of our vehicles are much larger than they used to be. So they're carrying more waste. So, and what about vehicle, fire engines and emergency vehicles? None of that is mentioned in the conditions, but it's actually mentioned by. So you know, I go along. I won't be voting for the proposal because I think it's far too big for a village like Rugby. So I will say no more. As you know, I don't sit on the fence.
Chairman, maybe I can help. The condition 12 of the recommendation, Chair, at page 82 is a condition requested by the Highway Authority, and that requires details of the estate roads and the junctions in terms of the junction to the main road to be submitted to and approved by. And of course, as part of their overall review of the layout, and as it's going to be to adoptable standards, it follows therefore that it has the capacity and it meets all the standards to enable the right road widths, the right visibility, the right manoeuvring areas to be set out as any part of any approval which the Highway Authority is going to adopt. So I think we can assure Councillor Aldridge that it will be built to Highway Authority adoptable standards. Thank you.
Sorry, could I just come back on that? In the report at 7.7, it says all the minor roads would be of suitable width with turning heads able to accommodate refuse lorries and other large vehicles. It was the tracking diagrams were submitted with the application as part of the transport assessment. So highways have seen that on the layout that's been submitted. Thank you.
Can I just come back and say what is suitable? Because suitable was okay in Halton-a-Clay and some of these newer states. The government regulations are not suitable, as we have found in Halton-a-Clay. So suitable needs clarification.
Yeah, I presume suitable means adopted to the local highway standards. But seeing no further speakers, we'll go to the vote. Councillor Alex Hall has proposed approval. Councillor Jones has seconded it. Joanne, if you want to take the roll call.
Okay, for the approval vote then, Councillor Terry Aldridge.
Against, for the reasons I've said.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
For.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
For.
Councillor Sid Dennis.
For.
Councillor David Edgington.
For.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
For.
Councillor Alex Hall.
For.
Councillor David Hall.
Against, I agree with Councillor Aldridge. It's not wide enough.
Okay, Councillor Neil Jones.
For.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
For.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
For.
Councillor Daniel McNally.
Abstain.
Councillor Jim Swanson.
For.
Okay, that's 10 for, 2 against and 1 abstention, Chairman.
Thank you. So that has been approved as with the written paper. Thank you, Michelle. So that takes us on to item number 8, which is land rear of 52A, Eastfield House, Woodall Spa. Rachel, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. The current application is an application for the erection of a dwelling to the rear of an existing property, the existing dwelling fronting onto Horncastle Road in Woodhall Spa. The first slide before you is an aerial shot that shows the application site in the context of neighbouring development. The site is in this clearing area here, where my arrow is pointing at the moment. Whilst we're on this slide, the applicant has referred in submissions to other developments nearby that they wish to draw members' attention to. One of those is one at Bachelors Farm to the east of the site, which is here. The development there was in this area. It replaced an existing poultry farm with residential development. And as you can see, other development wraps around the back. The other development referred to is one to the west of the site at Warrens Wood, where there was already depth development rear of the frontage properties, but we'll see that in greater detail as we move through the slides. Members' attention is also drawn to the supplementary papers that have previously been forward, which form part of considerations. You'll note that there is a letter of support from the ward councillor and also further comments from the applicants and officers. So looking at the application site again on another aerial view, you can see it slightly more clearly here. The application site is here, Horncastle Road running along here, and the existing frontage development here. Bachelors Farm and Warren's Wood being located in this area here. So the application site is the area outlined in red here on the slide. The site is to be accessed by an existing grass track, which is a secondary access to the application property at number 52A, which is located here. And again, the sites that have been referred to in correspondence that members will have seen are here at Bachelors Farm and also here at Warren's Wood. As you'll see on this slide, it shows the existing access way, an existing residential property located at the back of frontage properties on Horncastle Road, and the depth development that is already in existence here. Obviously, in the area where the application site is located, either side there is frontage development. Obviously, the site is near to these two other sites that have been referred to. The application is a full application for the erection of a single dwelling with a triple garage. So the proposed dwelling is to be sited in this area here. Whilst we're on this slide, members will see in the papers that reference is made to the site's location within a site of nature conservation interest, and that designation made through the local plan affects the whole of the application site and this area to the rear. Although you will note that there has been a recent meeting by the Greater Lincolnshire Nature Partnership where it has resolved to recommend to the District Council that the site is de-designated. So this is a slide showing the application site and existing tree cover, and a larger slide showing the application site as it exists at present. The application site with the dwelling proposed, the elevations of the proposed dwelling and the garage. So moving to the site itself, this is the site frontage with Horncastle Road, and the proposed access goes between existing properties here, numbers 50 and 52. You'll note on your papers at page 89, there is a letter of objection received from number 52, which is on this side, to the application proposals. So looking in both directions from the site access, there's good visibility in both directions. Looking along the site access to the application site and back at the relationship of the access to existing dwellings either side of it. This picture taken looking back towards Horncastle Road. So this is taken from the proposed access road looking into the application site, which is within this clearing here. The applicant's existing property. And again, looking across the application site, which is surrounded by existing woodland. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Rachel. I've got a couple of people with their hands up, but I shall ask Councillor Hall if he wants to speak, because obviously I can't raise his hand on his phone.
Oh. Hello, sorry, Chairman. Yes, I would like to speak if that's okay.
Yep,
hello.
Carry on.
So yeah, I was just looking at the officer's recommendation for refusal of this application, and I see that the only reason for refusal is under the local plan policy SP3, and with it not being an appropriate location. But I would disagree with that assessment, and I would say that it is an appropriate location. Considering that that is the only reason for refusal, I would like to propose approval of this application.
Thank you. I'll come back to you in a bit for reasoning. So next on the list is Councillor Swanson.
Right, have you got me? Daniel, have you got me?
Yeah, we've got you.
It's I'm looking at the report and paragraph 8.1. It's very, very succinct, and if I use the words redoubt, Councillor Eyre would understand the word. And I think that development of this site would result in an incongruous spur of depth development projecting behind the existing line of properties on the ribbon development. And I totally endorse the officer's recommendation to refuse. So I'm proposing refusal in line with the officer's recommendation. And I'm not going to say any more.
Thank you, Councillor Swanson. Councillor Aldridge is next.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I second Councillor Swanson's proposal, and I would go with the officer's recommendation. I think it's back development, and could, you know, there's no, it's just in the wrong place. So I support Councillor Swanson, and I second his proposal and go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Aldridge. Councillor Cunnington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just check that 3.4 of the report, it does, am I reading it correctly, that it has been taken out of the Lincolnshire Biodiversity Partnership remit for the site?
Would you like me to clarify that, Chairman?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Only the District Council can actually allocate sites as sites of nature conservation interest, but in deciding on those recommendations through the local plan, we take into account the advice of the Greater Lincolnshire Nature Partnership, who are specialists in looking at whether sites meet the criteria for those designations. Obviously, that advice at the time the designation was made was that it should be an SNCI, but we're led to we have been informed that in March, the Greater Lincolnshire Nature Partnership resolved to suggest to us that the site should be de-designated. And as part of the consideration on this application, we therefore consider that that recommendation should be afforded weight in our considerations, and that the reason for refusal that was given on the last application on the basis of the impact on the SNCI was probably one that was now difficult to sustain.
Thank you for the clarity, Ray. Did you want to come back on anything, Councillor Cunnington?
Yeah, the only other thing, Chair, is I can understand that the people would like to downsize, but yet they're going for a great big triple garage. I just can't see the logic there. Downsize and make it more maintainable, and you put a triple garage in. That's the only other point. I just can't understand why you would do that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next on the list is Councillor David Hall.
Sorry, you've actually answered my question. I do apologise. I was going to ask about why it had been de-designated.
Thank you. Councillor Neil Jones.
Yeah, I have difficulty with this one because it's called an incongruous spur, and yet you've got equal alignment on the left and on the right. And this area is no longer regarded as biodiversity, apparently. And you've got previous back development all the way along there. I think you'd have a real problem to try and show that this one is an incongruous spur to the depth of development when you've already got ones in line with it. Therefore, I would support Councillor Hall with his approval and second him.
Right, okay, Councillor Hall, have you got reasons for approval?
Yes, I believe it is an appropriate location.
Could I add also that under 8.2 it says that this is appropriate for this part of the village and the development would not result in any unacceptable highway or neighbourhood amenity issues. That's under 8.2 in the conclusion.
Well, thank you. So we'll go with the, I don't see, oh, hang on, Councillor Edgington.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think this is rather finely balanced, but I think Councillor Neil Jones summed it up pretty neatly. If you look at the plan, it isn't a spur in isolation, is it? So I think it makes, I'm inclined to support the application. Thank you.
Councillor Hall, David Hall, going back. Oh.
Yeah, no, I'm here. Can we make sure, if we are going to approve this one, can we make sure that the privacy of number 52 is actually kept up?
Right.
That would be my only recommendation. If we're going to approve it, we have to make sure that number 52 is actually, because they put forward that if it is approved, they want privacy, to actually put that as a recommendation if we approve it.
Yeah, so is there anything Paul or Angela would like to add to anything?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, if I may. And I think the diagram on the screen explains it. I do understand that it is finely balanced. That's your officer's views as well. But when you look at the screen, you do see that although there is development with depth to the extreme left and to the extreme right of the slide, there is a not insignificant run of properties that are purely frontage. And you'll see that this application site is, if you like, almost in the middle. So an approval here could potentially set a precedent for those properties either side. So you would then have other instances and other pressure for proposals. It's also, I think, Chair, pointing out paragraph 7.8 of the report, that the two schemes that are talked about as being in depth that have had previous approvals, they were first of all approved under a different policy regime, under an old local plan, and the poultry farm and its redevelopment would have been probably previously developed land. So we're not comparing like types of application here. We are now dealing with an application on the current local plan based on the character assessment and, as the officer report recommends, the spur of development giving backland development. And for those reasons, Chair, there is the recommendation for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Angela, did you want to come in as well?
Yeah, Chairman, just to endorse what Mr. Edwards has said, really, is that when we're looking at sort of historically of what's happened, we are looking at the old local plan, old plan policies. You've now got a new local plan, and what I would say is that consistency in decision making in line with your local plan is paramount. So I wouldn't be too concerned about sort of previous historic development, because you've got the justification of a new local plan that you are applying consistently in your decision making now. So I'd just be very conscious of that point when you're looking at sort of historic development, which you are drawing comparisons with. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it is finely balanced, but I do think looking at the recommendation to approve, looking at the line on the map here, I think, you know, Woodall Spa is a very sought after place to live, and I think, you know, taking it balanced out, that I would move to approve this with my colleagues. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So I don't see anyone else with a hand up, so we'll go for the refusal. which was
No,
done
that's
Can I give you some, just guide you on that? The original motion on the table of Councillor Swanson's, supported by Councillor Aldridge, was to refuse in line with officer recommendation. The amendment to that motion was put by Alex Hall, which was supported by Councillor Jones, which is to approve. So we go with the approval first. So it's whether or not. So the vote is to approve the application contrary to officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. So try again. So we're going for the vote for approval, which was Councillor Alex Hall proposed, Councillor Jones seconded. So Joanne, if you want to take a vote on the approval of the application.
Okay, Councillor Terry Aldridge, please.
Against, go with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Billy Brooks.
For.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
For.
Councillor Sid Dennis.
For.
Councillor David Edgington.
For.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
For.
Councillor Alex Hall.
For.
Councillor David Hall.
Against.
Councillor Neil Jones.
For.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
For.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
Against.
Councillor Daniel McNally.
Abstain.
And Councillor Jim Swanson.
Against.
That's 8 for, 4 against and 1 abstention, Chairman.
Thank you. So that has been approved against the officer's recommendations. Is the proposer and the seconder okay to delegate the appropriate conditions to the planning to deal with? Councillor Hall, Councillor Jones?
Yeah, certainly I agree with that, and I think some protection should be given to number 52.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree with that.
Thank you. So that's that. Thank you, Rachel. That brings us on to item number 9, which is land east of Fernhouse, Field Lane, Fristley, Boston. And it's Paul Edwards.
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
I can't see the problem there.
So we're now on page 99 of the agenda papers, Chair, and the report proper starts at page 101. So we have an application for 2 houses in Fold Hill near Friskley, and you'll see that the reason for it coming to committee is set out at the top of the report at page 101, and the site and the surroundings are described at paragraph 2.1. So if we look at the overhead then, Friskley proper is to the top left of the screen, and southwest is the area known as Fold Hill. And then the application site is in that area there with red. So we have on the south side of Field Lane, linear line of properties and an area I've circled in red to show you the position of the application site. If we then zoom in a little bit on that one, again, we see Field Lane, and the application site is the area that I'm circling here. And as I say, it's a full application for 2 properties. The application drawing, I'm afraid, isn't as clear, but you can see then the red line application site on the south side of Field Lane. Again, it's that area there. You'll see there are consultation responses reported at page 102, There are no outstanding objections. You'll see there are 12 letters of support have been received. They're set out at para 4.10. The supplementary papers, Chair, you'll see the ward councillors' comments are produced there in full from Councillor Carlene Dickinson. They're on page 12 of the supplementary papers. Following that, there's a letter of support from the agent. Again, that's set out in full. That's page 13 and 14 of the supplementary papers. And then finally, the last page, there's a short update on flood risk, which I'll come on to. But basically what it's saying is the site doesn't meet the sequential test as required by plan policy and the NPPF. But given that there are site-specific, let's call them locational issues, the recommendation for refusal excludes failure to meet the sequential test because the development can be made safe. And this is a consideration that I think the committee should take into account. So that concludes the supplementary papers, Chair. So we come to the principle of development on the right-hand side of those pages. You look at them, page 103. Friskeney villages, if you like. There is the large village, there's Dyke, which is a small village, and Fold Hill itself, which is classified as a hamlet. So, as committee will be aware, for plan policy purposes, the site is in the open countryside. And in terms of that location, starting with the plan, we believe that this is therefore contrary to policy, and that explains the reason for the recommendation for refusal. There are appeal decisions referred to at 7.7 of the report, but I think balanced against this, there needs to be the benefit of removing what you'll see all of the representation letters say is an eyesore on the lane, and it has the benefit of removing something which clearly the local community aren't supportive of. So there would be the layout of the site with Fern House to the left-hand side of the screen and the footprints of the two proposals set back from the field lane frontage. There's some ground floor plans, the elevations, sections, and here's the application site itself. So this is on the lane looking south into the application site, looking slightly to the east, looking slightly to the west, that's Fern House, and then opposite the site, looking out across, looking north. Why, as I say, for plan policy purposes, it's in the open countryside. Ooh, sorry. We carry on then with flood risk at the bottom of page 104, and as I say, that isn't a reason for refusal, even though it doesn't meet the sequential test, but it can be made safe because of the FRA. Neighbour amenity is set out at 7.14, no effects on neighbour amenity, and then you see we come to the conclusions at the bottom of page 105 under section 8 of the report. It's divorced from recognised settlements in plan policy terms. It means there's a reliance on the motor car, and of course there is some local benefit, which is, I say, very, very clearly set out in the third party representations. On balance, Chair, there is a reason for refusal, and you'll see that's reason for refusal 1 on page 106 of the report. Recommendation for refusal, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. The first person, I've got some people on the screen, but the first person I'll ask is Councillor Alex Hall, because I can't see his hand. Have you got anything to say?
Not at the moment, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So, Councillor Aldridge.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I can't see any real objection to this. I mean, how do people get to East Lindsey? How do the officers get here at the moment? They come by their cars, and to use that as an excuse, which we've heard time and time and time again, is not an acceptable excuse. It's an infill, and I can't see any reason why this should be up for refusal. it's in line with the other dwellings in that village, and I would propose acceptance against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Is that due to being a brownfield site, eyesore?
Chairman, if I could just ask, actually, just so we have some clarity, which we maybe haven't this morning, just on this, if we could just see if anyone's prepared to second that recommendation, then we can move forward on this particular recommendation, so that we keep more clarity around what the motion on the table is. Thank you.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, because I think Councillor Aldridge has hit the nail on the head there. It's infill. There's houses to the left, to the right, and when you look at what the property looks like now, I mean, how can we stop a new development going there when it looks absolutely terrible at present? It's all broken down and stuff. So yeah, I'd definitely like to second Councillor Aldridge on this one.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Brooks has just obviously seconded it, which I was looking to do. The objections about it not being accessible via public transport. If people didn't want to live there and couldn't drive, they wouldn't buy them. You've got to be mindful of the local residents that don't object. They're looking to tidy up the village, getting rid of that mess, putting this there, which does tidy it up, I think is only good for the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I've got to agree with everybody. This is surely infill. We fought very hard to be able to build up to 2 houses in the local plan in unsustainable villages and rural areas. And this is precisely what this is. It's in keeping with that line. There's 2 smart dwellings, one each side of the site. It is an infill site, and I will obviously support the recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite happy with everybody's comments. The only thing I would say, I believe that our officer, Paul, suggested that we should make sure we put in to mitigate the flood risk within that. And as long as we mitigate the flood risk, it can only be a betterment for Fold Hill, and I will go along with everybody else as long as but I think we just need to be mindful to mitigate the flood risk.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Just to reiterate that, you know, this is the classic linear development that we get in this area. And it certainly looks like infill and would be a betterment and tidying up of that area. But also it's something we've touched on before about the smaller villages supporting the slightly lesser villages. So we've got a large village, a village and a hamlet. They all work cooperatively. So that is their sustainability. So I will be in support of this development.
Thank you. Councillor Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that the community benefit from the tidy up that the development would create outweighs any technical argument that this is in the open countryside. So I support approval.
Thank you. See no further speakers. We've got a proposal for approval from Councillor Aldridge, seconded by Councillor Brooks, and I'm presuming that's with the conditions to be delegated to the planning team leader.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Thank you. So, Joanna, if you want to do the roll call.
Okay, for the approval vote then, Councillor Terry Aldridge.
Approve.
Councillor Billy Brooks.
For.
Councillor Richard Cunnington.
For.
Councillor Sid Dennis.
For.
Councillor David Edgington.
For.
Councillor Stephen Eyre.
For.
Councillor Alex Hall.
For.
Councillor David Hall.
For.
Councillor Neil Jones.
For.
Councillor Thomas Kemp.
For.
Councillor Helen Matthews.
For.
Councillor Daniel McNally.
Abstain.
Councillor Jim Swanson.
For.
That's 12 for, 0 against and 1 abstention, Councillor.
Right. So that has been approved. So that brings on to item number 10, which is appeals decided. It's just normal for note in his vote, you'd like to say, Paul?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Now, there is just the one appeal decision at Goulsby. Again, this is an interpretation of whether things are infill or not. There's an interesting paragraph to read, maybe for members at some of the time, paragraph 6 and 7 of the report on page 110. But other than that, just asking you to note. Thank you.
Thank you. That takes on to delegated decisions. Again, is the...
No, I'm sorry, it's quite a thick wodge of papers, Chair, given the delay between meetings, but nothing to add to that. If members have any specific queries, then please don't hesitate to contact me.
Yeah, no problem, thank you. And the date of the next meeting is the 2nd of July, unless that changes. But it's been good today. I think it's all gone well, so thank you.
Yeah, Chairman. Chairman, what date was that again, please? You broke up just when you gave us the date.
The 2nd of July.
Chair, can we ask what time, please?
I think, Chairman, we can probably assume the same time as today, at 10 o'clock start.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. There was some issues last time, wasn't there? We said whether it could be 10 or 11 due to the workload of getting to the office to get things to us. So
yeah, so it'll be on the agenda, and the invite will be sent out shortly. So that's it. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Can somebody remove me, please?
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman. See you soon.